You're listening to the Served Up Show, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful content. Your hostesses, Bridget Albert, is best known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with over 25 years of experience. And I'm Julie Milroy, best known for my passion for leading change and helping others grow in their careers. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry.
Hey y'all, it's Bridget here. I had the honor and pleasure of chatting with Marsha Lega. For over 28 years, Marsha strives to create contemporary art in the form of metal wall sculptures that appear to float across the wall, denying their unusual heaviness and attachment to supporting forms. Her art has been featured in Architectural Digest and even in A-Rod's bedroom. Changing and controlling industrial material in such a way as to bring out its beauty and humanity really excites Marsha. This fight to deny our unusual relationship with sheets of stainless steel, brass, and copper expresses Marsha's personal fight to affect her surroundings. It echoes the struggle all humans have to mold, change, and influence the unyielding, unnatural world around them. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite cocktail, and enjoy this very special show. Marsha, welcome to Served Up. It is an honor and pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
You are welcome. Could you tell our listeners about your journey into the metal arts world, specifically early on, what inspired you and your art? What did that journey look like?
I think that right from the very earliest age, I wanted to be an artist. And I always knew I wanted to be an artist. I didn't know how to be an artist, but I remember wanting to be an artist. And so I took art in high school, and then I majored in art in college. And then it was time for, I thought, well, I might as well get a master's degree. I get a master's degree at art. Stephanie, my daughter, was still nursing at the time, so it was always a challenge to try to get a master's degree when you have a nursing baby. But during that time, I went to Governor's State University, and I majored in metals. I just picked metals because I liked it. I don't know that I had a strong reason for picking metals, but I knew I was good at it, and I knew that it was fun for me to do. So I majored in metals and sculptural metals. And when I got done with my master's degree, I was still teaching. I was teaching at the high school level in Joliet. And I thought, well, that'll be my career. You know, I'm a wife. I have 2 children, and I'm going to be, I'll make stuff just because I think it's fun to make, but not because I had a career in doing it. And as time went on, unbeknownst to me, they decided to close Joliet East High School. Now, that meant that they compressed 2 high schools into 1 high school. 3 high schools into 2 high schools. And now they only needed 4 art teachers instead of 5 art teachers. And I was the lowest in seniority, so I was bumped out. And this is way before your time, but during the early 80s, Joliet, Illinois had the highest unemployment in the nation. Absolutely no employment. There was no employment. I applied for everything. It was unemployment. I even applied for mud wrestling because you had to have 2 applications as a mud wrestler.
Hold on. Time out. As a mud wrestler?
Well, yes. I thought, I had to have 2 applications a week, but I couldn't get an application. And so I thought they had in the Herald News international mud wrestling. And I thought, well, what the hell? I'm not going to be able to get this job, but I would. So anyway, I did. And then I applied to be, I thought it was a driving instructor, but in fact, not quite. So I called and they called me back. They were very happy to hear from me and everything. And then they said, how long have you been swimming? And I said, well, I've swam since I was a child. I thought an odd question, And how do you feel about diving? And I said, well, I've always been terrified of diving. I don't mind jumping in the water, but I don't like diving in the water. And he says, well, why would you apply to be a diving instructor? Another failure in my application path.
Goodness, so you were trying.
I was trying. Once that ran out, I decided I should do something to make a living. And so I thought, well, I liked all sorts of art stuff. So I would try 3 different things. So I made a business card that said, Marsha Lega, artist, working in fiber, stained glass, and metal. I thought, well, one of these might click. So I started making these fiber collages of people's homes. And I thought I could sell people a picture of their home made in fiber collage, which was good, except it took forever. You could never make a living doing this. And then I thought I'd take up stained glass. So I did that. And I did sell some stained glass windows that were specific to people's houses and what have you, because my idea was to be specific to the client. Unbelievably slow. I was slow as a mouse. I mean, you couldn't earn 20 cents an hour. And then I started making this jewelry, and I thought, holy crap, I am really good at this. I'm good. I'm fast. I'm efficient. I thought, okay, this is it. Metal. So I started making earrings and stuff. And I was kind of down on myself. And my sister came by, and I looked terrible. I was dressed in the worst clothes you could find in your closet. And she says, come on, we're going to go and start selling your jewelry somewhere. I said, what do you mean? I said, I look like hell. I can't go anywhere. What can I do? Anyway, she said, come on, get dressed. Let's go. So I grabbed my stuff and we went. She says, we can't go to places where people can't afford to buy jewelry. Let's go to Hinsdale. Not that I ever went to Hinsdale before, but we went to Hinsdale and we went to various little shops. And I went to a gallery called Nat. Her name was Thackerberry. She had a gallery upstairs and all sorts of interesting things in it. And I showed her my stuff and she loved everything. She said, but I've got the perfect person for you. So she starts rummaging around at her feet, which I thought was odd. But apparently that's where she keeps her newspapers. And she pulled out an article of a lady named Suzanne Craig in the city of Chicago who represented jewelry artists as a rep. And she says, call Suzanne. She's just the woman for you. And I thought, okay, and she bought 3 pairs of earrings. I couldn't go, that was wonderful. So anyway, off I went. And then Kathleen had to do something at the Art Institute, and she had an appointment down there for some reason. I was in the waiting room there, and it was really before, well, obviously it was before cell phones because we're talking early 80s. So anyway, I thought, well, maybe I'd go to the telephone and I'd call this Suzanne Craig because I'm in Chicago. Maybe she's close by. So I called her up and she answered the phone. And I said, Virginia Thackerberry, I think that was her name, had recommended her and thought that I would be a good fit for her. And she said, well, come on over. Where are you? And I said, well, I'm at the Art Institute. She said, well, I'm at the Apparel Mart. Just take a cab to the Apparel Mart. You can be here in no time. And I'll look at your stuff. So my sister had come back in and I said, Kathleen, I'm going to go see Suzanne Craig. She said, that's fine because I've got appointments for another couple hours. So off I went. But the thing was, I didn't know what the Apparel Mart was. I didn't know where the Apparel Mart existed at. It could have been in, Evanston. I had no idea. So I took a cab and they dropped me off at the Apparel Mart, which is was at that time right near the merchandise mart. I got out of the car, the thing, went upstairs. Suzanne Craig just loved it. She loved everything I did. She wanted to rep me. I didn't know what a rep was. I had no idea. I had no idea how you sold jewelry. And she said, I'll need 3 sets of samples because I've got a Minnesota showroom, a Houston showroom, and a Chicago showroom. So I need 3 sets of your samples. And I was making sterling silver sculptures. So they're sterling silver pendants and earrings at the time. And so then I said, oh, okay. And she said, and then what do I do? And she said, well, then you bring them here. And then I start selling them. And then I place orders. And once I place orders, then you can, we're in business. And I said, right now we're in business? Oh, absolutely. So I thought, holy shit. Now I had never made 2 pairs of earrings at a time. I never reproduced something. So I made an earring, then a set of earrings, then I make another set of earrings, then I make another set of earrings. Now I had to make a pattern off these earrings and try to make multiples And anyway, Suzanne Craig became my rep. And I started traveling with her to the New York shows. The New York shows had a fall market, a winter market, a spring market, and a holiday market. I had never heard any of this stuff ever. But anyway, I would go to New York, and it opened all sorts of doors that I didn't know existed. I didn't know how this was done. I didn't know how reps were. I didn't know how to bill, but it didn't matter. I did it in any case. One of the flights that I did take to New York, I was seated next to a man, and I was reading a novel, and I was laughing. It was funny. It was a funny novel. And he said, "Oh boy, you look like you're cheerful." And I said, "Well, I've just coming back from the mart, and I had a good show. I mean, from the apparel show, and I had a good show. So I'm reading a funny book. Oh, what do you make?" And I told him, and then he said, "Well, do you have any? Show me." And I opened it up and showed him some of my samples. He said, "I love them. Can I show my wife?" I said, "Sure." She's 3 rows up. So passing them overhead to the other people. Then she passed them back. She loves it. So he said, "Well, I want to tell you, I want to do something about this. I want to carry your jewelry." And I said, "Oh, great." And he said, "Okay." I said, "Well, where should I meet you in Chicago?" And he said, "Well, I'm the CEO of Carson Pure Scott."
Oh my gosh. Hang on, Marsha.
I know.
Seriously.
Yeah, seriously. So wow. I know. So I said, "Wow. Well, that's really good." He said, "There's certain stores will fit this arty stuff will fit in. Not every Carson's will fit in, but it'll fit in certain stores." So anyway, okay, I'm going to have my people call you. And I said, okay. My people are calling me. So anyway, then from there, I got the Tribune used to run a magazine section every Sunday in the Tribune, and I was featured. Big feature of my jewelry with models wearing it. I didn't know if they paid for all that because they put it all in the new jewelers and whatever. And so it was kind of an exciting time. And I was also at that time teaching at the Joliet Junior College part-time. I was an adjunct professor. I couldn't get a real serious job, but anyway, things were happening, things were popping. And somewhere in the mid 80s, I was in a car accident. The way you make sterling silver jewelry is you stand at a buffer and you're buffing this stuff. You cut the metal out and I fold it, and then I buff it. So I'm buffing the stuff. Well, I couldn't do it because my injury on my shoulder. And then I hired a variety of people to try to help me buff it. It was very, very uncomfortable and difficult for me to really work. And it wasn't the same as my touch to the jewelry. So in any case, I started thinking, well, if I could take my folded jewelry and make them big, they would be sculptures. Who to say that they couldn't be sculptures? Because I'm making this shit up. I don't know what I'm doing. And so anyway, I thought, okay, this sounds good. So I took my jewelry. I thought, well, what kind of metal should I work in? I knew nothing about metal. And I kind of looked at various metals, and aluminum was too white, and nickel was, it wasn't commonly available. And so I thought stainless steel. I had no knowledge of stainless steel, nothing. So then I went from sheet metal shop to sheet metal shop, and I called, and nobody would answer the phone. And they said, "Hey, no, lady, we're not making earrings into wall sculptures. We make ductwork, or we make this or we make that." Finally, I found a fellow that said, "Hey, I think Mike Fazio, and which company he works for is almost out of my mind right now. I can't quite place it. But in any case, he's come on over. Be happy to talk to you." So, he thought this was a wonderful idea. Why not? So I thought, okay, why not? So all of a sudden, I was out, and he said, "You have to come after hours. And we'll see if we get I get somebody that's interested in doing this for me." And so anyway, I started making sculptures. And I had previous to that, making the sculpture while I was still discussing it in my mind, I had I had a gallery on downtown Chicago that was carrying my jewelry. And I was telling her that I was thinking about doing the sculptures. If I could make big sculptures, I would make them, my earrings, and just, if I did that, she'd do a show for me. She'd do a 1 or 2 person show. And yes, that was a big friggin' deal, and it was in that arty area of Chicago anyway. So I did it, and I made, I don't know, 6 sculptures. So she did a show for me. Then from the show, somebody from the merchandise mart came and they loved everything. Could I make some trays? Trays, I thought, holy crap, trays, you mean like to put on your table? Oh, yes, absolutely. Put trays. Yeah, she wanted trays. So I started making trays. And there was a shift of how do I market this? Because Suzanne Craig was a jewelry person and she couldn't market this. And I mean, you could tell me if I'm telling you too big a story that goes on and on. I'm just telling you that nothing was planned. I had no designs on being anything other than a mother and an art teacher. And life just kept on going. So in any case, I started doing trade shows where I went to the American Craft Council shows. There's the highest end show that they have in America, and the Wendy Rosen show. So I started traveling to Baltimore and Philadelphia, San Francisco, Minneapolis, doing these shows and bringing my sculptures and bringing these trays. And I thought, wouldn't it be pretty if the tray had a mirror on it? Then your pretty bottles would look nice. So I brought those to San Francisco, which I only found out that afterwards that these were being purchased by places for cocaine use. I had no idea. Oh, yes. I mean, they wanted.
Oh, my God. Was
yes.
This still
and then somebody said, I'm doing so well with my sales of these trays because these shows would be half wholesale and half retail. I thought, well, why are they not buying my sculpture? But God damn it, these trays are going like hotcakes, And then some guy said to me, well, don't you know what they're going to use them for? And I thought, well, I thought they were to set your perfume bottles on. No, lady. Okay. So then I decided I would start. I didn't want to encourage drug usage. So I started hanging the trays on the wall and they became mirrors.
Mm.
So all of a sudden I was making sculptures and mirrors. And then from that, somebody asked me, actually a woman here in Joliet, Maura Gavankar, asked me, I would love one of your sculptures, but could you make a sculpture table, a table that was made like a sculpture? And I said, well, I haven't done that. I guess I can. So she was the first person to order a table. And then that just kept evolving. And then I started making more tables and more sculptures. And, and there was no rhyme or reason. About that time, maybe it was about 1990, I moved out of my basement studio into a studio in Crest Hill that I had. And I had that studio for about 8 or 9 years. And then I started buying them. I stopped doing the jewelry altogether, which I pretty much had stopped already. And then I stopped, and I was teaching then at Harper College. I stopped doing the teaching so I could devote because I was torn between two things. And so then I just kept making the artwork, and I'm traveling for these various shows. And during these various shows, I met a lot of art consultants. So most of my sales went through art consultants. And so in any case, somewhere around the year 2000, Friends of Community Public Art, which was also in the same building I was in Crest Hill, decided it was time for them to move. And they found a building downtown Joliet, which was the old Steelworkers Hall. And Kathleen, who was my sister who founded that organization, she said, come on, you got to do this. You got to come down. And the city of Joliet at that time had a program that if you opened a retail store, they would give you $10,000 for your startup. And so I thought, okay, so I had a nice big studio and I had one room that was a gallery, but I didn't have enough to put in there. Now, this story kind of twists and turns because it's all happen chance. There is no thought that says, okay, I want to be a sculptor. I want to be a furniture artist. I want to be this. I want to be that. Nothing like that ever happened. Never happened. It just kind of flew along on a path. So anyway, it was the beginning of the use of digital cameras. So I thought, okay, I will go start photographing Joliet and I'll photograph all around the city. And So I started photographing and matting those up and putting it, because didn't have enough stuff to put in a gallery, because on the whole, everything I made, I sold. So I only made it if somebody bought it. Somebody like yourself could have said, Marsha, I need a sculpture over my fireplace. That was a big place to put these things. And, I didn't have stock, so to speak. I just had the samples I would bring on a trade show. So anyway, I started doing the photography. So that's the next path of my work, was the photography. I don't know if this is too much talk. I can't
keep it coming. It's so interesting.
it's just kind of like one thing after another that happened. So anyway, then I started making all these photographs. And from the photographs, I started selling the photographs. People liked the pictures of Joliet. And then I started selling more of them. And I was on the cover of, the Joliet, whatever magazine and all that kind of stuff. And people started coming through my studio. One fellow came in and he said, I have the perfect place. And the bagel man, oh my God, on Essington, Grogowski. Anyway, he said, I have a perfect place for your pictures. They'd be fine. And we're doing the urology building. You should do something for the urology building. So I thought, okay, that sounded good. So the urology manager came over and they liked what I did. And they liked the idea I was doing pictures of Joliet. And I was selling this as, when the people come into your facility, wouldn't it be nice to see things that they recognize? Pictures from West Park, pictures from Pilcher Park, pictures from downtown Joliet and surrounding towns. I actually expanded a little on Joliet, and as well as just the flora of our city, the flowers and all that stuff. So they loved it. They bought all sorts of pictures. I mean, I was, the funny part was, so I asked them what type of signage would they like, they have to have ADA signage on their things. So I had to print it out like little cards, and it said where it was, Pilcher Park, and then artist Marsha Lega, or photographer Marsha Lega. But they were big because, ADA needs somebody to be able to read it, not somebody that needs to put on the reading glasses to read it. So anyway, my name is plastered from hither to yon throughout the urology office, which was huge. It's a huge office. I mean, I don't know how many I sold to them. I don't know, 50 framed pictures or something, 40. So after that, I don't exactly remember how I got the connection. Somebody must have told these women from Colorado that I had a lot of artwork in my gallery. Maybe they might want to stop down or something. Anyway, they stopped down, and I told them they had gone to the urology building because that was a brand new building, and they were doing the artwork for Silver Cross. And so they were going to do the artwork for Silver Cross. And they couldn't help but notice who I was, since my name was plastered on every single picture. I probably still plastered all the way across, because every once in a while I'll get somebody who'll say, hey, I saw your artwork at the urology. I thought, oh, okay, what's the problem? Oh, somebody's got a problem in the family. But anyway, they came to visit me. That's how they came. Tom Grogowski, that was the first guy. He was kind of like a catalyst to start a little trail of photo selling. So they came, and I made a presentation, and I did the same presentation. I said, the people that come into Silver Cross, every time you go to the doctor, you can have a generic picture of blue blobs or blue flowers or whatever. And that's lovely. And it might be nice and calming, but it's actually more calming to see something you recognize, to see something that was part of your life or part of your, so when you come in and you're walking through the hallways, you could look and say, oh yeah, I used to do that, or I went to that ballpark, or I did this. So I had this little shtick that I was playing with, and they bought it and they loved it. So on the part, not in the hospital, because that went through a different hospital photography. There is a whole world of the places hospital art, but this was all of the medical buildings, the parts that you go to the doctor. So I got that. That was a big gig. So I put pictures all through that. I happened to go to the doctor, a doctor, I don't know, last year that was in that building. And I thought, oh, look at that. Those are my grandchildren. they're only like 2 or 3 years old, holding hands, walking in the park. And I'm thinking, now they're 21 and 18, life has marched on. So in any case, so the photography became, not that it took away completely from the steel, but it became a bigger part of my thing. And then I started doing banks, and I put photography in. I knew, I'm telling you right now, photographers, they don't sell a lot. And I knew nothing about photography. Nothing. When I say nothing, I knew nothing. I just had a little digital camera, 5 megapixel, and I'm taking these friggin' pictures all over the place. Naturally, as I went along, I was getting better cameras as they came out. But I had a good eye, and I was able to manipulate the pictures the way I wanted. I could crop them the way I wanted. I had an idea of the context of what I wanted to do, the story I wanted to tell. And I was good at selling my concept, which was part of the game, is, to be able to verbalize. And a lot of times, very wonderful photographers maybe couldn't do that. They couldn't verbalize what they were doing. They couldn't put it together as a concept. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. So it's an odd combination that made a person ability to be an artist and a merchant. So I was an artist plus a merchant. I didn't mean to be a merchant. I didn't ever start out thinking I'd be a merchant. But, starting selling earrings, I learned how to pull this stuff together. So anyway, then after that, my sister Kathleen was doing some work for the IBEW, the Illinois International Electrical Union people, and in Washington, D.C. And so she was talking to the head of the people. She said, I know you can't put paintings on every floor of this building. It's just impossible. And she said, but my sister could really work this. She could do photography for you that'll just, you won't believe what she can do. So anyway, I'm really not that person, but I said, okay. I flew to New York. I had taken some pictures of, I didn't even know who the electrical workers were or who they encompassed, but I had tried to take a picture or two of somebody working with them as an electrician. And they bought it. I said the same story. I said, let's make your building reflect who the members are. Let's find all the various parts of your membership, and I will photograph them and make them into art pieces. And once they're photographed and into art pieces, if they come to visit, they can see themselves. If not themselves, somebody like themselves as they walk through the halls. This is a big building in Washington, D.C. This is an enormous union, the IBEW. And so they bought it. They said, let's get going. So I had a terrific bunch of adventures, because now I was photographing electricians. I went up in the bucket, up on top of those high wire things way up in the, I told the fellow, I said, now the concept here is I'm your mother and you're not going to let me die, right? And up we go. Oh, that was a huge, I'm up there thinking, holy crap. Then I actually did Trump Tower. They were putting Trump Tower together. And I was out photographing on one of the ledges, going backward. And some electrician grabbed me by the front of the shirt and pulled me. And he said, they won't like it if you die. And pulled me back in because I was not paying attention. In Chicago, I did I went to the Bears game. I was out on the field with the Bears taking pictures, because not of the Bears playing, but of the people that hold those big circular things for sound. Those were electricians. The cameramen were IBEW people. So I was taking pictures of the camera people. I was, who else was, the people inside that do the mixing, where you sit there and all these feeds are coming in from these cameras and they're deciding what you're going to see on TV. So all of this was very, very exciting. I did the Cubs. I went up the Cubs and I was in the room with the talking heads, as they say. And then I was taking a picture of one of the camera and I said, well, what's the best place? He said, well, you've got to go up on top of that green screen, that green thing that tells you what the scores are? The scoreboard.
Scoreboard. Yes.
Yes. Go to the top of the scoreboard. You will never get a better set. I said, are you sure? Would your mother go to? I always refer these because I was getting, I'm not as old as now, but it was in the 90s. Would your mother be up there? I'm like, oh, in a minute. She'd be up there in a minute. Go on up. So I go up and you realize you get to the first thing and there's these people that they were still hand moving the things in the 90s, the numbers and all that stuff. And then, but you're going up ladders. And I said, holy cow, I'm going hand over hand over hand. And then when I got to the top, it's not just flat. It's all filled with, I don't know, steel buttresses to hold it together. I'm climbing over and he's over there. And I said, your mother wouldn't have come up. No, he said, no way in hell. She'd never come up the stairs, do this. I got some great shots. And so then I traveled with that. I was down in Mississippi and I was on the IBEW. We're working on the big warships and all that kind of stuff. And I can't tell you how many places I went. I was in Washington, D.C., where the printers were, where they print up the government stuff. And it was just very exciting. I was in the Christmas tree. I went up in the thing where the electricians from the city of Chicago were lighting the Christmas tree, running the thing, and I was up in some bucket. And I said, isn't there a strap to wrap around me in case? And he said, no, we just figure either you live or you die. And I thought, oh, okay. So anyways, but that was a lot of fun. And that went on probably about 3 or 4 years. And it came really when I needed it because 2008, we had our enormous recession. And the recession caused the absolute collapse of art galleries and art consultants. People were no longer spending freely. The heyday of everything's going to be wonderful and everybody's going to have money. And people were pulling back. There was a recession. People weren't getting jobs. Young people weren't getting jobs. And people were being bumped out of their jobs. Architects were out of work. If I hadn't had this photography aspect, because I still had been up until that point doing all of the sculptural work as well as that. But somewhere also in the middle of this also is, I have to put this part in too, because the photography was a lifesaver. Obviously, that continued. I lived off the photography. And right around 2000, my sister, Kathleen, who seems to be an integral part of my career, which for whatever reason, she was at a meeting of people that were talking about the I&M Canal. And the I&M Canal was at its beginning stages of becoming a recreational area for the state of Illinois. It had been approved in the late 1980s by Reagan but never funded for a national heritage corridor. And so it was one of the first that could be developed. So the idea was to develop a path from LaSalle to Chicago, basically, which was the I&M Canal, which caused the whole concept of building in Morris and Joliet and actually Chicago. Without that, we wouldn't have had Chicago, or at least not as a big city. So they were just at the very beginning stages. And Anna Koval was talking to my sister, and she said, boy, it's really hard to find somebody to work in the metals. We've got the designer and all that stuff. We can't find the metals person to fabricate, and how are they going to do it? And Kathleen said, well, my sister knows everything that is needed to be known about metal, all things about metal. Now, this is a blatant lie. I knew some things about metal, but I know more than you know about metal. But in fact, I don't know crap about, I had never even heard of Corten steel. But anyway, she told her that, this is wonderful. Okay. So they brought me in and I fabricated the first statue from their graphic artist. They had a graphic artist who was going to do the drawings. But the graphic artist was making pictures about 2 inches high. And what happens when you take a picture of a little drawing of a person, which is extremely charming, that's 2 inches high, and now you blow them up to be 6 feet tall, is all of a sudden, it's totally distorted. Little lumps. I mean, the paper that he was carrying looked like a huge sausage across his body. All sorts of things were wrong. And I said, I can't, I think his drawings are wonderful. They're great, but I can't work from this. I have to do my own artwork. if I'm going to fabricate this stuff. And so I started doing the I&M Canal, the Corten steel sculptures that you see around the city. And along, if you go to Morris, you'll see them. And I did the V markers. I knew nothing about any of this stuff. I had no idea. And I did have to learn how to change it to vectorize drawings that I made. And at first I cut them out and I sent them to the fabricator. Life size, I just cut them out. I didn't know how else to do it. I had the photographs. I would get models, and I hired a dramatist, Lori Carmine, who is still working with the city at the Bicentennial Park, and she'd get those outfits for everybody. And I do all the photography, and I pick the pictures, and I would take direction from the I&M Canal of who I was supposed to be portraying. So I might be portraying Mr. Gaylord or something like that. I learned how to vectorize and how to change the raster images to vectors so that the cutting thing where it was able to cut the metal as opposed to cutting it out of cardboard and then sending it over to the company. That was a very primitive method. But they were also just at the beginning stages of doing all this laser cutting and all this fancy stuff. So I got a lot of publicity for that. I did a lot for the I&M Canal. I don't know if I got 40 or 50 of these statues. I have 4 more are going into Streeter this spring. So I'm still doing the people, once again, the people that matter to that community. So it's kind of on the same thread of my photography. Who matters to that community? Who was important to the start of Streeter? So those are going in this spring. And in any case, then I just kept on going with my thing. And then my studio moved downtown Chicago on Chicago Street. And I was there maybe 4 or 5 years. And then I moved my studio in 2016 back to my home, thinking that would be a retirement time. Well, not really. I'm still doing it. I'm still doing it. And you probably wonder about the fact that I was in the Architectural Digest. I would get publicity sometimes unbeknownst to me. I mean, somebody sent me some magazine from Germany, or somebody sent me this, or somebody sent me that, And I thought, holy crap, where did that come from? But Kathleen, my sister, apparently had a subscription to Architectural Digest, and she's reading it. That wall sculpture looks like my sister's. She starts reading, and it says, noted artist Marsha Lega has, and it's a full page picture of the work that they bought from me over A-Rod's bed in his home. At that time, his significant other was J-Lo. I don't remember if they were married or not, but their significant other was J-Lo. So I know, can you imagine? It was an edition of Architectural Digest that was focused on his home. He had a major art collection, A-Rod. He has a beautiful art collection. It's just that I had a whole friggin' page. I mean, I was like, wow. But the funny part was,
that's not the funny part, that you didn't know you're an Architectural Digest with your...
No, I know. The part that was really funny was prior to Kathleen telling me this, I was getting these calls. People were calling me and they would say, I'm from London. I was just wondering, I've got this wall. This is the start of almost all sculpture stories, is they've got a wall. I've got this wall. I was just wondering, what do you think about your sculpture? It's got concrete within it. And I said, I think it'd be dynamite. It would look great. Steel and concrete would be great, Unbeknownst to me, of course, in Architectural Digest, my thing was on a concrete wall. And then I got a call from, I don't know, it was Singapore, I think. Singapore. Holy shit, what is going on? And then I got a call from Canada. And then I got a call from some Emirates area, someplace around. Anyway, so I had gotten all these calls, and then Kathleen called me and I said, you're singing. I thought, wow. So anyway, what it was is they distribute the Architectural Digest goes out internationally before it hits America. So I was getting these calls from international people and what have you. So that was a great boon to my career, because 2016 is how many years ago? 7 years ago? I would have been 70. And I was really thinking I was closing in on the end of this parade, all of a sudden, I'm getting calls and somebody wanted one. I actually did sell the one to the lady in Singapore, and she had a building with a wall, a concrete wall, just like A-Rod's wall. Anyway, so I had to ship that off, and I think Colorado and maybe Canada and some other ones. So it was all of a sudden I had a flurry of interest, which was an exciting time for me to have that happen. After that, I haven't really solicited business. I haven't gone out and tried to get business. I do get business, and I do still do things, but I'm scaling back. But I have the big thing in Streeter going out, and I have this big order for the International Crane people. I do these birds. I made a bird that went outside of a subdivision on Theodore Street. Okay. And I made a bird, a crane. And when I went up one time on vacation to Baraboo, Wisconsin with my husband, I took the crane. I thought maybe they'd like that in their shop or something. Well, they loved it. So I've been working with these people, the International Crane people, for years. And so I still make cranes for them and various, because I had taken pictures of all the cranes while I was up there. So life goes on. I'm 77. I'm not sure, where the next place will be. My daughter, Stephanie, is very positive about my work, and she thinks that she'd like to represent my work and do things with. I'm not interested in the marketing aspect of it anymore, nor do I have perhaps I have the stamina to talk about it. I have the stamina to design it. I don't have the stamina to actually physically make all the stuff, or the stamina to go out and try to do trade shows or any of that stuff. So she's very interested in pursuing more of that. And Stephanie's a very good artist. And my son is also very supportive of all the things that I've done. And his home is kind of like a tribute to his mother. So it's kind of, so that is the career of a Joliet artist, a woman who really planned nothing, absolutely nothing.
I think that's the title of your memoir.
I guess so. A woman without a plan.
A woman without a plan. And I would love to know, Marsha, you mentioned your children. And
yes.
For our listeners, yes. I'm actually dear friends. I'm lucky. I'm just blessed enough to be dear friends with Marsha's daughter, Stephanie.
Absolutely.
Would love to know, because you did have a career as a woman, as an artist in metal. And we're talking about, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, as you're bringing up children as well. With a lot of women decided just to stay home. It was a different time, a different era.
It was definitely a different era.
Females. And can you talk just a little bit maybe about what that was like for you as a woman coming up in art during that time and being a mother?
I would say that, when you think about America, there weren't many women artists working in metal, especially in jewelry, absolutely, but not in bigger pieces of metal. So that was exceedingly unusual. I think there was a sacrifice my children had to make because I was doing this. I did these trips. I left them. I would be gone for a week, and I knew of nobody that left their children, unless maybe somebody might have left their children with their grandparents while the husband and wife went on a trip. But I was going on all these trips by myself. I was traveling. I went to Japan I forgot that whole aspect. I worked with I did 3 trade shows in Japan and ended up working with Mr. Watanabe for numbers of years on other projects, buying antiques for him. But in any case, all of these trips were stressful for my family. They were stressful for my husband, who found it extremely annoying, and it's stressful for my family. I remember Stephanie said that when she was in middle school, they were going to be talking about the facts of life at school. I don't know what they would call that back in those days, but they needed a signature from the parent concerning the permission for them to have to participate in this type of class. And Stephanie was too embarrassed to ask. I wasn't there. Embarrassed, asked her father about having the talk. So she said she was one of about 5 girls that had to sit in the principal's office during the time of. You can imagine Stephanie. She was torn between. She couldn't ask her father about menstrual periods or whatever they were going to be talking about. It was just too much. And then I remember there was another time when she was in high school, and apparently she wanted to go to some venue in, I don't know, Romeoville or maybe it was Bolingbrook. But anyway, it was a place I would never say yes to. Absolutely never. It was rough. It was terrible. I would never have said, "Oh, that's a great idea." So, but since I was gone, she could ask her father, who knew nothing, apparently knew nothing, had never kept up with anything. And off Stephanie goes, only to have some kind of a weird experience that she probably would share with you, but maybe not the whole world. But anyway, so I think that they had the disadvantage of having a mother that was here and there. I was going probably at least 4 trips, maybe 5 a year. That's a lot. And
yeah, sure.
You're a working woman. You know this. If you're gone, your family suffers when you're gone. Now, on the other hand, I took my kids with me. Stephanie worked in the booths with me. I think started at about 14 or something like that. I was taking her to San Francisco. If it wasn't school time, she could come to do the shows with me. And I took Ted to New York. He was at New York with me. I mean, they had advantages that many other kids never had. They never got to see what it meant to work a booth, to sell the stuff, to hang the stuff. Teddy when he was, in 18, 19, he was delivering my artwork all over the city of Chicago, and bringing stuff here and bringing stuff there. And he got to talk to a lot of arty people that he wouldn't have talked to. So there were disadvantages, but they had doors open that they wouldn't have had opened for them. And they also saw me doing it. And when Stephanie went to college, she has a double major, and she did one part was in art, and she did a lot of jewelry work, her own artwork and what have you. And she has a marvelous eye. And now, for some unknown reason, my son, who is, I think, 52 years old, got some paint. His wife bought him some paint and canvas for Christmas. I think he's produced an enormous amount of paintings. I mean, I'm talking, I don't know, 30 paintings since Christmas. I mean, he's just like a maniac. And actually, they're pretty good. They're really pretty good. And not only pretty good, I'd say they're great. I can't believe he's doing this. You know what I mean? He went from never painting to painting with intensity, and every painting has gotten better. It's really amazing to see. And of my 4 grandchildren, my son Ted's youngest daughter is Ava, is very interested in art and quite gifted. And so I know your daughter is an art student also.
Yes, she is.
She just made a character for me. I put it on Facebook. She did a character of Grandma. And then she also included the drawing as it materialized, some kind of a video that shows her drawing the thing all the way through. And I don't even know how she did it, so I just posted that last night. So I think I think when you have children that see their mother maybe doing things that are a little different, it gives them a little more freedom to do different things and try different things. I mean, your daughter's out there going to school and being an artist. And maybe if you had been a totally stay-at-home mom, or even a regular path person, they might not have had the courage to do those things. So, and my son is a filmmaker. Who would have thought that, I
think it's amazing. You are incredibly an inspiring person all the way around. Your path is incredibly unique. And I know your children. I've met your children. Obviously, I'm dear friends with one of them, and they're boldly independent. And I think that's, just a great product of their parents.
And of course, I had never mentioned my husband. I was married for 53 years to the most amazing person that you could be married to. an icon of the city of Joliet and nationally in the music program, Ted Lega. Ted and I had not a lot in common, never did have a lot in common, but he had a passion, which was music. I had a passion, which was art. One time I was complaining, we never have any money. Why? And he said to me, he said, nothing that a straight job wouldn't solve, I said, okay, well, I'm not going to complain anymore. That's right. A straight job would have made a whole lot of difference because I would have had a regular income and whatever. So I thought, okay, he's not complaining that I don't have a straight job, but he didn't want to hear that I complained about the straight job. But I would say Ted struggled with me being gone. As the children got older, of course, that passed and wasn't as difficult for him, but he was supportive. And I think, and Stephanie told me he was proud of me, and he would say things, like to others that he was proud of what I was doing. And somewhere when I moved out of my studio, which I might have been my home studio into a faraway studio, offsite studio, I might have been maybe I was 50. Then he decided he'd take up cooking. So he cooked from then on, from the time I was 50, or he was 50 until he passed, or close to when he passed. He was the main person to do all the cooking and all of that kind of stuff. Stephanie says she doesn't hardly remember that I ever cooked. I said, what happened between the time I got married at 21 and 50? I was cooking. It was your father that took up cooking at 50 and went to 75. We both did an equal amount. But had I not had a husband that had, as we call it, a straight job, I could never have done this. So it takes your family to be able to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
100%. Frequently we'll see, and maybe in my era more than your era, but maybe in your era also, but maybe more than in your, not as much for your daughter, but it was hard to find women artists because women artists would support their husband. Frequently they'd marry artists. The woman artist would go get the straight job, support the husband in his artistic endeavors. But there was a hard press to find the husband that would support the wife in her artistic endeavors. I mean, unless it was a hobby.
Right. That's really interesting that you say that. It's really interesting because, when we look back, I'm a child of the 70s. And, you look back and my mother passes down her stories all the time of burning her bra and all these things. And, and especially in 1973, when women were allowed to get their own credit.
Absolutely.
Before that, they would have to have their husband co-sign to get a credit card or to get a loan, at the
get
bank.
Birth control pills unless your husband, when I got married, unless your husband signed off on it.
Oh my God. I think about how far we've come and then how we take a gazillion stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it does seem almost amazing, but I never thought it was weird. At the time, I don't remember thinking much about it because the kids are little. Teddy was born in 70 and Stephanie in 76. And I don't think I thought a whole lot about it. It's just the way it was. Your mother might have been more active in that aspect of it. I was more in the 70s. I was going to graduate school and pushing teaching and all that kind of stuff. There's only so many hours of the day.
Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. But this is why I find your story, just extra fascinating that as a woman artist, you were able to really pave your own way in such an unconventional way. It was the idea of buying steel. People never the whole thing was uncomfortable for the vendors I talked to. Really?
They had a hard time, well, can I talk to your husband or is your husband there? And I said, well, my husband is a musician. And, unless you want to talk up to him about clarinets or bands, forget it. It's not gonna help you, But I had a lot of support from the women art consultants and the women gallery owners.
Yeah.
And I had that support system was in place. And many of these art gallery owners and art consultants were nowadays, I guess you might call it vanity jobs. their husbands put them, the wives wanted to do something, but they didn't have to earn anything necessarily. They don't want to lose money, but they didn't have to be a real. So I was somewhat dependent on the fact that once again, their husbands were supporting them in order to. Now, there surely were art consultants that supported themselves and were successful on their own. But it was not uncommon that this would be a part-time endeavor or something they did on the side, kind of like a part-time interior designer or something of that nature. But I reaped the benefit of them being supportive of me as a woman.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you did. I can't wait to see what you do next, Marsha.
Oh,
I don't think that you are done.
Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know. I want to be done. Sometimes part of me says, "Oh, please." Last night, my daughter Stephanie was over, and she was organizing. I made the Steelman statue that's outside the high school. It's in 3/4 inch 410 steel, and I made the little ones, and I've been selling the little ones off and on for 15 years or something like that. And the JCA ones, I took pictures of the JCA top and I, made those sketches. So she was organizing all this. And I thought, oh my God, this might never end. This might never end. We might be doing, it might be evolving in another way, another whatever, Yeah. It is an unusual career. It is not a lucrative way of deciding to work. There's no set salary. It either works or it doesn't work. You're at, when the economy goes down, you're tied to, especially making art, which is a luxury item. It isn't, had I been a high school teacher and retired as a high school teacher, financially, I would be a lot better off at this point in my life, a lot better off. But would I have ever gone to Japan 3 times? Would I have ever traveled all over the country and done all this stuff with the IBW and the variety of things that I've been able to do? I couldn't have done.
Absolutely. I mean, your life has sounds like it's been fulfilling in so many ways.
I can't say that I've ever disliked doing anything I've done in my life.
Okay.
Which is, there's an awful lot of people that hate their jobs or hate what they do. Or I always was happy to be in the studio. I was always happy to be there. It was always a challenge. And I had I've always had arts studio assistants, generally speaking, young men. And I still have. Roger Carlson works with me. And that has always been nice. And then I had a wonderful office manager, Barb Siebert. And early in my career, I went to one of these those things where retired executives will talk to young people or young entrepreneurs. Not that I was that young of an entrepreneur, because I would have been, in my 30s when I started that. And I went to see him, and he said, "You're on the brink of failure. You got to get somebody to manage your office." He says, "You got to pay your bills on time. You got to order what you need to do. You got to be a business person. This isn't just for fun. You want to make this to survive, you've got to have somebody." So I had met Barb Siebert at, some fundraiser, and we were sitting next to each other, and she was saying that she was looking for she was an office person, and she'd worked for a legal office. And she was looking for some part. We were talking about jobs and people looking for jobs. I said, "Well, I have a perfect job. Do you want a part-time job?" She said, "Yeah," because she had kids and everything. She was a big asset. She worked for me from 1989 all the way to 2015. And with her corralling the business aspect, I was able to do what I did. Without her, I don't think I could have done it. Because she was, conscientious, and all the bills were always paid, things were always done, all the taxes were written out the right way, things weren't chaos. There could have been a lot more chaos without her help. So a lot of the people, I had help all the way through. I had young people that worked for me. There were good studio assistants. I had Barb working for me, who kept the office going, even though she was only there 2 or 3 days a week. And So, and I had a husband that was willing to go along with the plan, even though it didn't make him happy. And as far as me leaving so much, but he'd go along with it all. And I had no fear.
Oh, I love that. You had no fear.
No, I didn't know fear. So when the state of Illinois came to me and said, would you like to go to Japan and represent us at the trade show, their big trade show in Japan, I thought, yeah, why not? It never occurred to me to say, I know nothing about Japan. I don't know how to get to Japan. I don't know squat about Japan. Off I went. And so fear was, I might have had fear once I was close to taking off on the plane, but I didn't have any fear when I said I didn't care. I didn't have fear. And I didn't have an enormous amount of fear of failure. Because there was always something else down the line.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you for being on the show today, Marsha. Your story is an important story. And I'm so excited to share this out to our listeners because I know that no matter what someone desires to do, to hear your story will certainly inspire them.
Well, that'd be wonderful. Wouldn't that be nice if somebody was thinking, well, geez, should I do it or shouldn't I do it? And they say, well, she did it. Why not?
Absolutely.
Why not? Try it. I mean, the worst that can happen is you don't make any money, but you do need all that community. It would have been really tough to not have to be married to another artist.
I bet. I bet.
It would have been horrible. But then, yeah, you never know. You never know.
Never know. Well, I want to wish you just some great health and a lot of peace, Marsha. And thank you
Bridget,
so much for being on Served Up.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of future Served Up episodes. Cheers!